Juicerocc beats.
Bitch. Marathon shit. Young rich nigga shit. 10 rack of show shit. 10 racks, you know, that's what I mean. Check me out, look, she know my ex bitch. She thinks she got next. She fucked the Geiger niggas, throw that pussy off deck. She ain't no real bitch, that's why she talk shit. She been a hoe since middle school, why she ain't got shit. She ain't the home girl. She always.
Los Angeles, California, Monday, May 6th, 2019, 9:38 a.m. At the beginning of the proceedings, 24 grand jurors were present. Mrs. Annalie Roca, Madam Foreperson, would you please call this criminal grand jury hearing to order and swear the court reporter? The Foreperson, this hearing is now in session. Will the court reporter please raise your right hand? The grand jury reporter, Renee Marie Ivanko, was sworn as follows. The Foreperson, do you solemnly swear that you will correctly take in shorthand and correctly transcribe to the best of your ability all of the testimony given by each and every witness testifying in the matter now pending before this grand jury, and that you will keep secret and divulge to no one any of the proceedings of this grand jury? So help you God? The reporter, I do. Thank you so much. Will the secretary please call the roll? The secretary called the roll. Miss Annalie Roca. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Please let the record reflect that there are 24 grand jurors present. Also present is Deputy District Attorney John McKinney and myself, the grand jury legal advisor. Would the foreperson please read the foreperson statement? Madam Foreperson, you start with name of target. The foreperson reading. Name of target, Eric Ronald Holder Jr. Target Eric Ronald Holder Jr., quote-unquote Holder, and Witness 1 met in February of 2019. Witness 1, who worked as a home health care worker by day and a redacted by night, met Holder during a fair. Over the course of the next month, Holder and Witness 1 spent time socializing together, including having one sexual encounter. During her brief friendship with Holder, Witness 1 became aware that he was a Rolling 60s gang member. Witness 1 also learned that Holder usually carried a black semi-automatic handgun that he said he needed for protection. On Sunday, March 31st, 2019, Witness 1 and Holder drove from Long Beach to Los Angeles to get food and shop. Holder directed Witness 1 to pull into a strip mall at Slauson Avenue and Crenshaw Boulevard. Holder told Witness 1 that he was going to get something to eat at the restaurant in the strip mall. As Witness 1 pulled into the parking lot, she saw a man that she recognized as Nipsey Hussle, whose legal name is Ermias Asgenad, quote-unquote Hussle. Witness 1 got excited and said, "Hey, that's Nipsey Hussle." Holder did not respond. Holder never told Witness 1 that he knew Hussle, nor did Holder give Witness 1 any reason to believe that he expected to see Hussle at that location. Once there, Holder went into the Master Burger restaurant to order food. After spending a few moments inside the restaurant, Holder walked over to a group of 3 men, including Hussle. Holder spent several minutes talking to the men before Witness 1 got out of her car and approached the group to request a picture with Hussle. While Witness number 1 waited to take a picture with Hussle, she heard Holder ask Hussle if he had ever snitched. Hussle calmly waved Holder off as if he did not want to talk to him. Witness number 1 took a selfie photograph with Hussle, then returned to her car. Holder remained talking to Hussle for a few more minutes, then walked back into the restaurant. Holder left the restaurant with his food order and walked back to Hussle for another brief conversation. Holder then returned to witness number 1's car. Once inside the car, Holder told witness number 1 to drive around the corner. Witness number 1 followed Holder's instructions and drove onto Crenshaw Boulevard. She then noticed that Holder was holding a black semi-automatic handgun. It was the first time that day that she saw Holder with a gun. Holder started pulling back on the slide at the top of the gun and told witness number 1 to drive around the block so he could do a drive-by. Witness number 1 refused. Holder then demanded that witness number 1 pull into a parking lot located between Slauson Avenue and 58th Place. Holder got out of the car, put on a red shirt, and told witness number 1 to wait and not move. Holder walked around northbound through the alley back towards the strip mall parking lot and slowly approached Hussle's location. When he was within a few feet of Hussle, Holder displayed a firearm and fired several shots at Hussle and several other people who were sitting and standing within a few feet of Hussle. Hussle, Carrie Lathan, quote unquote Lathan, and Shermy Villanueva were struck by bullets and immediately fell to the ground. Hussle was shot multiple times. Lathan was shot once in his back, and Shermy Villanueva suffered a graze wound to his front waist area. Hussle died a short time after the shooting, and Lathan was hospitalized for his injuries. Villanueva suffered a superficial injury. Matters to be considered in connection with the above named targets. Ms. Roca. Target, the foreperson. Target. This hearing concerns whether sufficient evidence will be presented to the criminal grand jury to indict Eric Ronald Holder Jr. for 1 count of murder, 2 counts of attempted murder, 2 counts of assault with a firearm, and 1 count of felon in possession of a firearm. The proposed indictment charges target Eric Ronald Holder Jr. with murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187 Alpha, 2 counts of attempted murder in violation of Penal Code Sections 664/187 Alpha, 2 counts of assault with a firearm in violation of Penal Code Section 245 Alpha 2, and 1 count of felon in possession of a firearm in violation of Penal Code Section 29800 Alpha 1. Tentative witness list: number 1, Herman Douglas; number 2, Carrie Lathan; number 3, Shermy Villanueva; number 4, Alejandro Guerrero; number 5, witness number 1; number 6, Thorsten Timmermans; number 37459, Miss Annalie Roca. You don't have to read that, just the names. The foreperson: number 7, Frank Zaragoza; number 8, Scott Tubert; number 9, Cliff Rose; number 10, Ryan Sauz; number 11, George Morales; number 12, Cedric Washington; number 13, Michael Ramirez; number 14, Coroner Representative. Any member of the grand jury who has a state of mind in reference to this case or to any of the parties involved, which will prevent him or her from acting impartially and without prejudice to the substantial rights of any of the said parties, shall now retire. Miss Annalie Roca. And if there are any grand jurors who do not believe that they can be impartial without prejudice, please raise your hand. Madam Foreperson, there is a witness, SIC, who has indicated that he cannot be fair and impartial. So at this time, I'm going to ask that all of the other jurors please exit the hearing room so that the foreperson can conduct a hearing in regards to this witness. It should just be a couple of minutes. And I'm going to ask the Deputy District Attorney to leave the hearing room as well. 23 grand jurors exited the grand jury hearing room. Ms. Annalie Roca. And let the record reflect that 23 grand jurors have left the hearing room and Mr. McKinney is leaving the hearing room. Deputy District Attorney McKinney exited the grand jury hearing room. Ms. Annalie Roca. Those remaining are the foreperson, myself, and the court reporter, and a juror that we'll identify as juror number 14. So, Madam Foreperson, would you please inquire of the juror as to the reasons why this juror cannot, why he has the state of mind in reference to this case that will prevent him from acting impartially and without prejudice to the substantial rights of any of the parties. The foreperson. Just rephrase that, Miss Roca. Just ask the witness to tell you why. The foreperson. Juror number 14. Can you tell me why you feel that you cannot be impartial in this case? Grand juror number 14. Yes, because of previous watching of the media, watching the video of what happened, and then also working and living in that area. Sometimes I frequent the restaurant close to that area where the shooting took place, and also that my wife sometimes has to go into that area to a supermarket not far down, just down the street from the incident. The foreperson. So do those factors prevent you from being impartial? And if so, what would be the prejudice there? Grand juror number 14. The prejudice would be, I've already formed an opinion on the guilt or innocence of the suspect, the foreperson. So I want to remind you that you are not making a decision as to innocence or guilt. The burden of proof is probable cause. Juror 14. Correct. So do you believe that you've already formed an opinion of probable cause about the target? Correct. And that would prevent you from being impartial to the target? Correct. That would make me partial. Okay. Juror number 14, I will ask you to retire and return for the next case because you cannot be impartial towards the target in this particular case. And I'm making that finding that you cannot be impartial and you would be prejudiced against the target, Miss Annalie Roca. All right. Thank you, Madam Foreperson. And juror number 14, I'm going to ask that you leave the hearing room and we'll see you for the next case this month. Thank you very much. Juror number 14 is leaving the hearing room, and I am advising him that because he has read the foreperson statement and he is familiar with this case, that he's admonished and advised not to discuss this case with anyone and to uphold the secrecy of the grand jury, particularly as to this case. Thank you, juror number 14. Juror number 14. Okay. Mrs. Roca, Madam Foreperson, he is excused. Yes, the foreperson. Yes, he is excused. Thank you. Deputy District Attorney McKinney and 23 grand jurors entered the grand jury hearing room. Ms. Roca, back on the record. Let the record reflect that there are now 23 grand jurors present. Mr. McKinney has re-entered the hearing room and myself, the legal advisor. I am here as well. Give me a second, Madam Foreperson. A pause in the proceedings. Mrs. Annalie Roca. So, Madam Foreperson, at this time, do you give Mr. McKinney permission to provide the grand jurors with a brief opening statement? So ordered. The foreperson. So ordered. Thank you. Mr. McKinney, as you will recall, since you were just here a couple of months ago or a month ago, that you are there near the court reporter. If you would like a podium, we'll bring one out for you. Mr. McKinney. No need. Okay. Okay. Opening statement. Mr. McKinney. Good morning. My name is John McKinney. I'm a Deputy District Attorney for the County of Los Angeles, and I am pleased to present this case to you this morning and over the next 2 days. This is People versus the target, Eric Holder. This case involves the death of Ermias Joseph Asghedom, known to the world as Nipsey Hussle. Mr. Asghedom lived most of his life in South Los Angeles. He grew up in the area of Slauson and Crenshaw. During his life, he became an associate and then a member of a local street gang in the area called the Rollin' 60s. He was a fixture in his later teens and early 20s at businesses near the intersection of Slauson and Crenshaw. His activities started to change during his late teen years and early 20s away from street gang activities to music. He became consumed with music and started a burgeoning career as a rapper and really made a name for himself and a career for himself from the bottom up and from the outside in. He started producing his own music and selling music out of the trunk of his car. He did it for years. He became so popular on this underground circuit that he became sought after by some of the biggest record labels and eventually signed a record deal. And after over 10 years of selling music quite successfully, he had his first album produced recently, which was nominated for a Grammy Award. He was well known in the area of Slauson and Crenshaw. He is beloved in that area. In fact, has fans all over the world. The target in this case, Mr. Holder, is also someone who grew up in the area of South Los Angeles, also became a member of the Rollin' 60s gang, which is a Crip gang in South Los Angeles, was also familiar with people in the area of Slauson, Crenshaw. Mr. Holder, as it turns out, also was an aspiring rapper, but not nearly as successful as Mr. Asghedom or Nipsey Hussle. This case involves the shooting and killing of Mr. Asghedom and the shooting and injuries to two other individuals, Kerry Lathan and Shermy Villanueva, that occurred on the afternoon of Sunday, March 31st, 2019. Mr. Hussle, Mr. Asghedom, and I'll probably go back and forth between calling him Nipsey and Mr. Hussle and Mr. Asghedom, all the same person, made an unannounced appearance at a strip mall at the intersection of Slauson and Crenshaw. That place was a place that in his younger years he spent a lot of time, and a lot of time doing activities that weren't necessarily lawful activities, but in his later years, as he became successful, he ended up buying that property. So he and his brother owned and operated most of the businesses at that property. You'll hear a little bit about some of the businesses that operated at that property. The main business being a store called the Marathon Store, where he sold a lot of his own merchandise. So on Sunday, the 31st, he showed up unannounced. He got there a little after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He got out of his vehicle and he started greeting people in the parking lot. And he stayed in the parking lot for the entire time he was there up until the time he was shot. During that time, he signed autographs, he took pictures with fans, he talked to some of his friends. Some of them were also fellow Rollin' 60s gang members, and really nothing unusual or eventful occurred. Mr. Holder showed up. Mr. Holder showed up apparently not knowing that Mr. Hussle was going to be there that day. Just a chance encounter. He arrived at the parking lot from another city. He was being driven by a person who we will call witness number 1 in this case. Mr. Holder got out of the car, immediately walked up to the group where Mr. Hussle or Mr. Asghedom was, and they had a conversation. That conversation is important because that conversation had something to do with Mr. Asghedom accusing Mr. Holder of snitching, which in the gang world is a very serious offense. During the course of the hearing today, we'll try and elicit as much information from witnesses who were present about that conversation as we can, but apparently the conversation had something to do with Mr. Asghedom telling Mr. Holder that word on the street was that Mr. Holder was snitching. The conversation wasn't particularly intense, it wasn't particularly belligerent, and it lasted for about 4 minutes. Mr. Holder eventually got some food, got in the car with witness number 1, and they drove off. After they drove off, Mr. Holder pulled out a gun, told witness number 1 to drive around the block. Witness number 1 drove Mr. Holder around the block, also told him to put the gun away. She was concerned that he might shoot her accidentally or shoot somebody from her car. He then told her to pull over at a certain location near the strip mall. He put on a shirt. He had been shirtless. He put on a shirt and he told her to wait there. He'd be right back. She didn't necessarily know where he was going. He walked off back towards the parking lot, where he then walked up to within a couple feet of Mr. Asghedom and fired multiple rounds into him from 2 different guns. One gun was a semi-automatic handgun, which leaves casings at the scene typically when it's fired, and the other gun was a revolver, which does not leave any evidence of a shooting other than the bullets that expel from the gun. After firing multiple rounds, Mr. Holder ran back to witness number 1's car, jumped in the car, instructed her to drive away. She asked what happened. He told her to drive, otherwise he would slap her. She was confused. She didn't know if he had done a shooting because she heard shots. She didn't know if he had been shot at or what was going on. Witness number 1 attempted to get information from him, but he wouldn't answer any questions. She drove him back to the area where he lived and dropped him off. That night, he called and asked if he could stay at her place. She allowed him to stay at her place, according to her, still not knowing that he was responsible for the shooting that occurred at 3420 Slauson Avenue. The next morning, he asked if she could help him get a room at a motel. She did so still, according to her, not knowing that he was responsible for the shooting. 2 days after the shooting, she turned herself into the Los Angeles Police Department. She submitted to a 5-hour interview. She allowed investigators to search her car, her phone, her home, her mother's home, and she's cooperated with the investigation in every way that she's been asked since then. Investigators went out and served a search warrant on the target's home and a relative's home, but did not find the guns that were used in this shooting. So that essentially is the basic outline of the facts of what happened. You'll get a lot more detailed information from the witnesses when they testify. A couple of things I want you to be aware of. Witness number 1 and another victim, Carrie Lathan, were both given use immunity for their testimony today. Use immunity is a promise from the district attorney that we will not seek to prosecute victim Carrie Lathan or witness 1 for anything that those witnesses say during their testimony here today. The reason we give use immunity, there are 2 primary reasons. 1, it eliminates any Fifth Amendment claim that a witness might have. No witness has asserted that right up to this point, but we grant it if there's any possibility of it. And we also grant it because it frees the witness up to tell the truth, knowing nothing they say here can be used against them in a prosecution. So there's no reason for them not to tell the truth. Also, in the agreement is the provision that if they lie here, they will be prosecuted for perjury. So the agreement does not immunize them against false statements or perjury before use. It just immunizes them from any outside prosecution from what they say here. So we will explore what both of those witnesses, what they saw, what they heard, what they thought, what they felt, and what they may have told investigators on prior occasions. The reason we're calling Witness 1 instead of by her name is out of concern for her safety. There have been a number of threats that have been made on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Instagram against the quote-unquote driver. There are a lot of people who have posted things online that have assumed that the driver was a part of the crime, that the driver had the knowledge and intent and was a co-participant in the crime. The driver has not been charged with any crime, but out of a concern that if her true identity were known, she would be subject to all kinds of threats, harassment, maybe even violence. We have decided to call her Witness 1 here. We obviously know who she is, and if this case goes beyond this process, the defense will be given her full name and all the other identifying information they need to conduct their own investigation, if they choose to. You're gonna see some videos, and you're gonna see some video over and over again, because different witnesses have different perspectives and can shed light on the video in different ways. A video was taken. This is the shopping center at 3420 Slauson. This is where, let's see if I can. So this is where the shooting occurred. Most of what you're going to be focused on happened here in this area, near the entrance to the Marathon store, which is located here. Essentially, what the evidence will show is that Mr. Asghedom arrived, parked his car in this area in front of what will be a fish restaurant. He got out of the car and he spent all of his time in this area right near the entrance to his store. A few minutes after he got out of the car, Witness 1 and Holder arrived off of Slauson, pulled into a very crowded parking lot. The driver stopped here. Holder got out and went into this restaurant called Master Burger to get some food. And Witness 1 says that was the reason they went to this area in the first place. He told her, "Hey, I want to get something to eat. Pull in here." When she pulled in, she immediately saw Nipsey and she recognized him. She didn't know him personally, but she was a fan and she recognized him, and she said out loud, "Hey, there goes Nipsey." Holder had no response when she said that. He didn't say, "Oh, I know him," or anything like that. Gave no indication that he had any idea who he was. After Holder ordered food, he walked directly from the Master Burger over to the group of men where Mr. Asghedom was, and he engaged in a conversation there. We have a person here today who was there during that entire conversation and will relate to you what he heard being said. Witness 1 saw Holder walk over to this group, and she thought, "Oh, well, if he's going over to take a picture," thinking that's why he went there, she thought, "Well, I want to get a picture with him too." She got out of her car, walked over to the group, and asked if she could take a picture with Nipsey Hussle. While she was standing there, she heard a fragment of the conversation, and she heard Holder calling Hussle cuz. She kept hearing him refer to him as cuz, which is a common way that Rollin' 60s talk to each other. Cousin, it's short for cousin. She also said she heard Holder say something about snitching. She heard him say to Nipsey something to the effect of, "So you've never snitched?" or "Haven't you snitched?" She said she didn't know what the conversation was about. She just wanted a picture. Nipsey Hussle paused the conversation, took a picture with her. So witness number 1 drops down in that familiar selfie pose and takes a picture. She was excited. She ran back to her car. She sat in the car while Holder remained in the group. While sitting in her car, she immediately posts that picture on social media. Look at me, I'm with Nipsey Hussle. She was happy. She was excited. Meanwhile, Holder and Nipsey Hussle engage in what looks like, a serious conversation. Obviously, there's no sound to the video, but it looks intense, I should say. After that conversation, Holder walks back to the burger restaurant. He then walks out to the car where witness 1 is. He gets money as he doesn't have enough to pay for his food. He then goes back in. He gets food and then he walks back to the group another time. He shakes a couple of hands, gets in the car, and they leave. And they leave out of this lot and they drive around the corner. And they drive. According to witness 1, Holder wants to go around the block. So she drives around the block. They pass again. This time they pull into this gas station and around to where there's a Master Burger restaurant where he says he wants to eat his food. So he had ordered some chili fries from the restaurant. She said at this point she stopped. He started eating his food. She let him. He put on his shirt and she had seen a gun for the first time. When they were driving around the block, he pulled out a gun. He started manipulating the gun. And it's a gun she had seen him with before. She knew him for about a month. She met him back in February of 2019, February 25th, I believe. And they started this sort of, modern dating relationship where they were hanging out, I guess, They saw each other, according to her, like every other day. She wouldn't call him her boyfriend. He wouldn't call her his girlfriend. But it sounds like it was a dating relationship. They had sex at least one time during this relationship, but it didn't sound like it was a long relationship or extensive relationship. But during that time period, she had seen him with multiple guns. He claimed he needed them for protection. She obviously had an opportunity to see his body, particularly his upper body, which is covered in tattoos, including Rollin 60s gang tattoos, which she would have had an opportunity to see. But according to her, she didn't know much about gangs. She didn't know much about the Rollin 60s, didn't know much about this area of Los Angeles, as she is not from here. She is a 30-something-year-old woman. She has no criminal history whatsoever. She is gainfully employed. She has some college. She has no known gang associations or ties. So that's who witness number 1 is. So she said after she stopped to let him eat his food, he put on a shirt and he walked away. He said, "Don't move, I'll be right back." According to her, she didn't know where he was going or what he was going to do. He walked off in the direction back through this alley towards the parking lot, and from where she was, she could not see into the parking lot, but she saw him walk down this alley. She saw him place his food container on the hood of a car and continued walking. A few moments later, she heard gunshots. She heard 2 shots. After hearing 2 shots, she saw people running. Holder had, in that time period, walked over between 2 parked cars in front of the store. In between these 2 cars was Mr. Asgenam. He was talking to Mr. Latham. Immediately behind them was Shermy Villanueva and another gentleman who will be called Rimpa. When he opened fire, fired multiple shots. Mr. Asgenam and Mr. Latham immediately both fell to the ground. Mr. Villanueva was struck in the abdomen, but managed to get away from the gunfire. Mr. Holder was firing with 2 different handguns, trading between his right hand and his left hand, and then he made his way out of the alley back to the car, which then took off. As I said, this was all captured by several cameras that will be discussed. Keep in mind that the times on the cameras are not accurate. Camera 6, for example, will be 67 minutes off. I'll be referring to the times imprinted on the camera, but that time won't be the actual time of events, and we'll have witnesses come in to testify whether the cameras were faster or slower, and the camera from 58th place. So that's it. We're ready to get started if you are. I thank you for your time and your attention. At the end, we're going to ask you to consider 6 criminal counts. 1 count of murder, 2 counts of attempted murder, 2 lesser related counts of assault with a firearm. Those 2 counts are related to the 2 attempted murders, and I'll explain that more when we get to the closing statement of why we did that and what we're asking you to find there. And then 1 count of felon in possession of a firearm. Thank you, Miss Annalie Roca. Thank you. The grand jurors are admonished and advised that the foreperson statement as well as the opening statement by Mr. McKinney are not evidence and are not to be considered as evidence. And Mr. McKinney, at this time, would you request of the foreperson that your exhibits 1 through 42 be marked? Yes, Madam Foreperson, so marked, so marked. Thank you. Marked for identification, exhibits 1 through 41. Your first witness, Mr. McKinney, the people call Mr. Alejandro Guerrero, Mrs. Annalie Roca, and Mr. Sergeant at Arms, if you would please call for Mr. Alejandro Guerrero. And there we have it, family. That is the foreperson statement and the opening statements from Deputy District Attorney Mr. McKinney. Make sure you guys hop in those comments. Let me know what you think, what you hear, what you see, what you theorize, what you hypothesize, all that stuff. As always, it's long live Nip Hussle the Great. The marathon continues. It's the son of Shamsuddin. It's true.
Look, somehow I escaped the fate of this life I lead. Divorced the street, she tried to kill me and my wife to be. Black widow, silk sheets and a satin pillow. This California king loves you like a sack of Indo. Empty Patron bottles and a pack of Mentos. Master suite, refrigerator full of incidentals. Every day we have a ball like a blonde bimbo. Talk to her like a shrink and fuck her like a nympho. And it can be as simple as it seems if you never doubt yourself and learn from everything you see. No, wishing on a star can turn your life into a dream. And you could walk on water, so don't look down at your feet. Look, told this world I was a star and I'm gonna need a stage. Cause life is short and talk is cheap, so fuck what people say. When I was 12, a crazy lady told me lead the way. I shed a tear cause it was real, swore to never stray. Now every second is a classic with nothing less. Gotta take a moment and appreciate the fact that this world is turning faster and faster. And once you felt the real, it's hard to tolerate the plastic. I ain't no Christian, ain't no Catholic, but I believe God gon' shine his light on everyone that never had shit. I need some answers to these questions that I'm asking. We used to be connected, who detached us? Used to be respected, now they laugh. We turned into possessions with no passion. How we go from the best to less than average? We used to be connected, who detached us? With no collective identity. It's every man for himself. Me. We need a black mafia. Look. Ruthless crip on some stupid shit. To valeting at Ruth Chris is some ruthless shit. I think too much TV is what ruins kids. When homosexual actresses they influences. We need community centers that teach the music biz. That way we learn to retain ownership on some Jewish shit. Don't take no handouts, you build it, it's more lucrative. And out of everything that I spoke, it's the truest shit. You get abused long enough, you start abusing shit. She flipped the script and now your woman calling you a bitch. You got some problems in the house that only you can fix. And if you was a kid that grew up with it, even you would split. He told the world he was a star and he gon' need a stage. Cause life is short and talk is cheap, so fuck what people say. When he was 12, a crazy lady told him lead the way. He shed a tear cause it was real and swore to never stray. Now every second is a class, ain't nothing strange. Gotta take a moment and appreciate the fact that this world is turning faster and faster. And once you felt the real, it's hard to tolerate the plastic. I ain't no Christian, ain't no Catholic, but I believe God gon' shine his light on everyone that never had shit. I need some answers to these questions that I'm asking. We used to be connected, who detached us? No separation. Yo. God conquer me. Art of war. Me. Us. We. Love.
Juicerocc.